Thank you so much for joining us here on the Change Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Eric. If you're new, welcome. And thank you so much for being here with us. And if you're a regular fan, thank you so much for coming back. It's great to see you again. Today, we have Myrna King, a thought leader in coaching, leadership, spiritual practice, and personal development, who founded A Life Aligned. After more than a decade consulting in the tech industry and financial services, she now specializes in project-based and life alignment coaching, helping clients to bridge that gap between where they are and where they want to be. She also co-founded the Small Business Festival and the Austin Coaching Coalition. Myrna, thank you so much for taking your time to be with me today.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. When people run off that list, I think I've been at this a while.
That's why we have people who are very experienced like yourself. So
Well,
again,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Yeah, it's delightful to talk with a leader who is interested in cultivating leaders. It's very refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a passion that I have to build leaders. I mean, that's a statement that I made to someone the other day, was that leaders build the other leaders and not just followers. And so I think together, as another guest said one time, one show at a time, we make them.
Very good. Well, I was taught early on that when you're climbing up, you should put a hand down and help
Mm-hmm.
somebody behind you because somebody did it for you. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So to kick us off, why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself, some of your experiences, and kind of what you're working on lately?
oh, sure, I appreciate that. Well, in the last year, I've developed a team coaching concept. So I lead a team of coaches now, and that's very exciting. I usually do the leadership, the executive coaching, the business coaching kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have some other wonderful coaches who pitch in at different aspects of what a person might need. So we're doing that in a website called alifedesigned.org. And so if people think, maybe I'm up for a remodel of my life, or I could use an edit, or, I thought by year 10 in this business, I'd be at this place, but I'm at this place. And so I wonder how do I cover the gap? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think more than one expert can be helpful. You don't always need more than one, but it's nice to have a team of horses pulling the wagon if you've got far to go. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's new, but I came around to coaching after years as a business consultant. And it's funny, my adult son moved out and I had free time. That's always things. So I decided I should add coaching to the mix. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did. And for years I had been a meditation teacher, yoga meditation,
Okay.
that I donated on the side. Church basements kind of thing, or people who would say, I've always wondered about meditation. Would you mind teaching me? And for free, of course, I always did. But it gave me some insight into life coaching or personal coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and the business consulting, helped me see the business side. So I'm an unusual mix of the two. One
A great
example,
one.
yeah, thanks. One of the examples is a woman who was raised in India, had been in the US for 10 years, was a project manager in an IT company, and she was having trouble with some of her bosses, people stealing her ideas, stepping on her in
Mm-hmm.
meetings, and her culture didn't allow her to be assertive at all. But she finally had enough. And her husband said, you should just get some help about this, someone who can help you navigate sort of what's going on in the corporate culture. And so we did that. And she got promoted and took control of her projects, let go of two projects she shouldn't have been running, but there were some slackers on the team. So that
Mm-hmm.
got realigned. She's very happy. The last 30 minutes of our final meeting, she said, there is something on the personal side maybe you could help me with now that we've handled all the business stuff. I have a family member coming to visit from India. He's going to be here 3 weeks. And I was not raised Christian, but I know Christians at work here in America. And I want to understand about forgiveness. Like, I don't know what the process is. I need to forgive him, but I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went through some personal programs around forgiveness, tapping or emotional freedom technique for the last 30 minutes. And she released this burden she'd been carrying for years because she just didn't have a culture that taught her how to do forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But she recognized it was available, and so she asked. And so at the end of our, business coaching segment that we did achieve those results, we achieved this final result. She had an amazing experience with the visiting family member, and the decks were cleared. They were reconnected. But
Hmm.
when you are looking for support, you usually start with, what's the biggest rock I have to move out of the way, right?
Hmm.
But I find in coaching, there's some rocks adjacent to it that might need to go too while we're at it, while we're here. Is there anything
Right.
else? Oh, you need to forgive someone? Well, let's handle that. We have 30 minutes.
Hmm.
So we did. So I think that when you have a coach that has some experience, they're versatile enough to say, oh, there's something here. It's not like this, but we can do both of those. Let's, include it. And I think it's a holistic view of how to support the person achieving their aims, maybe in more than one section of their life.
Yeah.
So, in fact, we just put up a personal curriculum item on A Life Designed that lets people look at the wheel of life and kind of, think about those segments. Is there anything I need to shore up or want to do over in another segment, to just contemplate, if I was living my best life, now that I've got the promotion, now that I've done the forgiveness, now that my divorce is amicable, whatever it is somebody's working on, there are other things you could be tuning a little bit, and there's coaching for that.
Hmm.
So,
The thing that I see, or at least imagine, underlying in that whole example that you just provided, especially on the young lady from India, is the are the two instances of courage that had to have happened and that
yeah.
she had to have had, not only just to begin and ask for it, but to keep it moving and say, I'm going to take something that's challenging and scary to some people to
Hmm.
do, because it's
Hmm.
hard to find empathy and find ways to forgive people. Um,
Well, I think when you talk about leadership, and please subscribe to your podcast because it's amazing.
Thank
Leaders
you.
are change agents and they take the scary out of change, right? They break it down and you just march through the execution. But to have leadership in your personal life that says, okay, it's time to get to the bottom of the thing I'm afraid of, or it's time to let go of something that, while I may have enjoyed it in the beginning, it's become burdensome.
Mhm.
And so to kind of look at, if I was a leader for myself, what changes would I make? To what do I want more of? What do I want less of? And that does take courage.
Yeah.
I think coaches can lead you in, especially the area of possibility. Her husband had said, "Look, find an executive coach who can help you navigate this," because she didn't know what was possible. She had a particular cultural upbringing that she was
Yeah.
honoring, but she didn't know, is it okay if I say this, or how do I even say it? It feels wrong. I know what this one executive is doing with me in meetings is wrong. I don't know how to make it stop. So coaches show you possibility. Oh, and I have a saying. I say, let's not find one way to see if we can navigate that. Let's find three ways.
Mhm.
And then we'll rank them in order of your preference. We'll do the first one. That doesn't quite get you there. We'll do the second one.
Right.
If we've still got something left, we'll do the third one. There's always more than one way. And so it's not a matter of pass, fail, pass, fail. We chip away until we are finally the circumstance we're happy with. It might take 3 or 4 tries to kind of get there, and then we're there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's brilliant to have that one to many relationship and alternative ideas of how you want to solve a problem, because it really emphasizes that there are many ways to address challenges. There are so many leaders that look at something and they say, there's only one option. I either, or most time they'll say it's two, right? One of, what's the least worst of my options, and I'll choose
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Um,
What brings the less pain? What gets me there faster? I think coaches that lead also practice the Socratic method of asking questions. I work with a lot of very smart people, and they can be difficult to coach because they already know everything.
yep.
Being a smart person who has been a know-it-all in the past, it can be hard to talk with someone. And then they're really frustrated because they have solved big problems and they have something that's not solving, but they know how to solve problems, but this one is unsolved. It's confusing. Like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I know how to do this. Why isn't it done? And so asking Socratic questions about, what does it look like when it is done? Share with me a time in the past where you had an unsolvable problem and you solved it. Let's look at what the mechanics. We're going to break down the mechanics of that. Could we apply those mechanics this time? And usually you're caught up in the frustration of the thing happening now, and you need someone who can bring you back to
Hmm.
say, I have solved bigger problems than this. Okay. One of the things I like to do, you talked about kind of how you get people unstuck is to pretend the data set is a Jenga block. We're
Right.
going to take all the pieces apart in the data set and we're going to see if we can connect them differently. Is it time and money? And can we reverse those things? Is it your personnel or your tools? What are the components you have to work with? And can we stack it differently so it's possible now instead of how you were thinking about it? So if you
Yeah.
unpack the data set and then realign, sometimes it's right there. But you need a sounding board and someone who's not knee deep in the thing like the client is to say, well, let's just take that apart and reconstruct it and see what we have then.
Yeah.
Oh, so because we do get in our own way, I mean, that's why you talk to somebody else. So,
Yeah. The moment you spoke about unstuck, I'm going to come back to that because that was I was reading about this in some of your literature and it was really interesting to me.
mhm,
But for the moment, in regards to your coaching, you
mhm,
talk about you identify the gaps between where people are and where they want to be.
mhm.
What's a common gap that you see, and why is it so
Oh,
hard for people to fix it on their own?
a common gap is not understanding the results of what they ask for. So we hear people say, I just knew I needed to be a director. And I knew it meant that I was going to have more travel, but I'm finally in charge of the division, and it's not what I thought it was.
Yeah, be careful for what you ask for.
Yeah, yeah, it's not what I thought it was. The travel is having knock-on effects in my personal life or with my health.
Mhm.
And I find that I have to work 10 extra hours to recover from the burnout of the travel itself. Like there's wear and tear on me psychologically, physically. With the travel itself, I now actually have like 10 less work hours a week because of the travel. And I didn't know that going in. So sometimes when you arrive at the thing you've been fighting for, you realize, why was I fighting for this again?
Hmm.
And also there's uh, people who say, I've been leading this team for this amount of time. I've actually accomplished what I want to accomplish. I want to take a step back and just be the subject matter expert. I just want to lead the design team. I don't want to run the whole department. You find where's the juice in my life that restores me and fills my cup? And how do I do more of that and less of every other darn thing?
Hmm.
So there could be a time in your life where, okay, mountain climbed. Now I'm going to go down 5,000 feet, hang out at this pretty park for a while. You can step back and find that more rewarding. You get personal time back. You have more of the thing you love to do.
Yeah.
How often have you heard a manager say, well, I took the management role or the director role because it was the next logical step and it's more money, but I miss being an engineer, but I
Hmm.
miss being in charge of the design, but I miss, actually attending the events we're planning. They miss the part that brought them to the role in the first place because then they're now in charge. And so, yeah, I think finding that gap is where's the juice? What's different than what you thought? Can we drain some of that out?
Hmm.
Sometimes with an executive, you can find a personal assistant to do the nominal nonsense and let them go to the event, or let them sit in on the design team meeting. How do we get you back to more juice, the stuff that's, fulfilling for you? And
Hmm.
then offload. AI, of course, is going to help with all of this. I did an interview recently with someone who ran his travel receipts through AI and had a beautiful spreadsheet from Claude, I think it was,
Yep.
in 15 minutes. And he said, the last time I tried to do all this math and put all these different parts from the email together, it was like 3 hours worth of work. And it took Claude 15 minutes. And
Hmm.
so life is going to get better if you don't like that kind of detailed spreadsheet stuff for all of us. I'm in the camp of no thank you to the spreadsheets.
Right.
Don't
Yeah,
make
me
me
too.
do an expense report.
Yeah, scare me. Show me an Excel icon, and I'm running.
Yeah, that's right. I don't speak Excel. I tried. I can't do it. But
Um,
yeah,
so,
so
going back to what you were talking about in terms of taking a step back,
mhm,
that really hits me personally because uh, what I'm doing now is nowhere near the level of authority that I had two
mhm,
years ago when I was a senior PM
mhm,
running $400 million projects with
mhm,
15, 20, 30 people on there running all types of disciplines from software engineering to hardware engineering to developers to testers and everything else in
mhm,
the between. And I was very invigorated by the beginning of that. I was more nervous about how do I lead this project as not being a subject matter expert in 80% of all of the disciplines that I have working for me,
Mhm.
but also how do I lead all of these people with unique and dynamic personalities. And to go back to what you said, it was invigorating. I got past that. I got past the nervousness, the fear of it. I
Mhm.
navigated some real issues in the beginning
Mhm.
successfully. I
Mhm.
turned the perception of our customer that was, I would say, mediocre and lukewarm, to be honest, when we
Mhm.
started,
Mhm.
to excellent at the back end. They would just loved us. We were premier service provider.
Mhm.
And when I walked away from this program after 5 years, I felt like, what am I going to do? And I took a step back and I went to a non-management role. And I cannot tell you how freeing it felt when I realized I get to spend more time with my family. I get to spend more time with my kids. I
Yeah.
get to learn stuff that nobody else is. I've done things. I've been successful. I'm really proud of that. But you couldn't pay me to go back and do that again, because now
Mhm.
I've discovered it wasn't necessarily the value of the program that I missed. It was the family. Uh,
Mhm.
and I really just appreciate what you said, because it really is a personal moment for me to recognize that. A quick question on that as well. When you have clients that are doing this and they're trying to fix that
Mhm.
gap on their own, do
Mhm.
you have a way that you track their progress, or do you give them advice on how they can measure where their
We
success?
do, and it's dependent on each person.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes if you say, "Do we wanna put some metrics around it?" It's like saying, "Should we put it on a spreadsheet?" Some people go, "I don't want any metrics.
No, thanks.
Please don't give me a letter grade."
Mm-hmm.
So, but for others, you know, you ask questions like, "What would it look like when you think you're halfway through? What does it look like when you're done?" And let's just reverse engineer, you know, what those steps look like, and then line them up over the next 6 or 8 weeks. And if you're on track or you've changed your mind midway through, we just realign. So it's kind of a softer approach to, this is how I think it's going to end. This is how I can kind of tell we'd be in the middle. And then we're just going to back up and identify some tasks and some steps. There's always learning all the way through. That old saying of, you know, it's the journey, not the destination, is really true, because while they're in the journey, there's a lot to savor. You know, that person in accounting who you have a bad relationship with, and we decide as part of your journey, we're going to make a peace offering. That person is going to become friendly to you. Let's engineer how we do that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's usually some misunderstanding. They're both thinking about each other the wrong way, you know, and so sometimes it's a lunch, and then finding some common ground, and then telling them why the Patriots are never going to win another football game when you tease them, and they go, "Oh no, I'll wait till this weekend." So
Uh-huh.
usually it's small things, and instead of being at loggerheads, to learn, okay, that's a place of friction, and I'm going to take the friction out of that. Here's some tools around it, to savor the parts of the journey that get you to where you want to be going. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very rewarding to see people arrive there. The thing about coaching as well as leadership is, once someone has developed a skill like that, they always have it. It's like you learn to drive a car, you now know how. You can get behind the wheel of the car and drive it. You've
Yeah.
learned to ride a bike, you know how. You climb on a bike, you ride. So, how to navigate a difficult personality, or how to make amends if mistakes were made, or how to bring someone to heal without, you know, physical violence, you know, and say, I
No two
understand.
by fours in the room, please.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You know, you've made a commitment 3 times in a row, you've missed the commitment 3 times in a row, so we're gonna unpack this because there won't be a 4th time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm for you, and let's get to the bottom of this. And even if we have to do it day by day until you climb on the bike and start writing to your deadlines, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then they know how.
Yeah. You have a ton of experience in leadership management, and you've got this very unique skill and experience level in spiritual inner work practices that make
Mhm,
people much more powerful. And those combinations of those two things are very powerful.
mhm,
Is there, how do you, I mean, this is a pretty open question, so you take it where you want, but how do
mhm,
you customize an approach for clients when they ask about like, what can you do for me?
mhm. Well, I usually ask a question during sort of the original intake conversation. Do
Mm,
you have a faith? Do you practice a faith?
mhm,
And so some people consider themselves spiritual but not religious. Some people say, I'm a cradle Catholic, depending on what it is their orientation is. Because I'll say, then I'll use some of your faith practices to kind of buttress what we're
mhm,
working on. And for people who don't have a faith practice, then that tool's off the table. So it's just a question. Is there a tool on the table here in terms of your faith practice? And when someone does have a faith practice, sometimes the Socratic question is, are you in your right place?
mhm,
We need butchers, we need bakers, we need candlestick makers. I say sometimes that our creator, how he engineered the world, gave us 30,000 different kinds of spiders. 30,000. I don't think we need more than one kind of spider personally. If you
Personally, I would agree.
need a single kind of spider probably would have been enough, but no, 30,000 different kinds of spiders. So, how many different kinds of people there are, how many different ways to solve a problem? There's a giant variety. And
Mhm,
so, a person has to individually dial in that person's best way to do the following. So, if you have ADD or ADHD, or if you're an introvert or you're an extrovert, that's okay. We can dial in a solution that's exactly right for you, and then you use it forevermore. Now you know how.
mhm.
So let's just get to what works for you and do more of that. And then that lets people relax about this is being customized and dialed in. And I'm in a laboratory. I tried that. It didn't work. Okay, we're going to go with the second way. That worked beautifully. Okay, we found your way to deal with difficult people. Check. You know, that's off
Mhm.
the list. You know how. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I
Mhm.
I was very curious about that because, and I can only imagine that the work that has to go in. You have to be such an amazing listener to have
Mhm.
someone sit down. And I bet if I was a betting man,
Mhm.
that you probably had many instances where you helped a client discover a tool in that toolbox you just described that they didn't know they even had.
Yep.
And that's
Well,
got to
it's
be a
easy
good
to
feeling.
forget. I think one of the things that blinds us is the emotional component of something that's happening. When someone's suddenly being persecuted on a job and they've had 10 years and glowing reports, new management comes in and now they're getting friction about
Hmm.
their job. It's like, I know I'm good at my job. I have a stack of positive reports. I have raises every year, but now it's being called into question by the new leadership or new management. And so, you can say, well, you can't take it personally. You know what you deliver. They either don't recognize your value or they want to put their brother-in-law on the job. You don't have the
Hmm.
background. But it may be that this is the catalyst to say it's time to move ahead someplace else.
Yeah.
And so to kind of take the burden off of what am I doing wrong? Does God hate me? Why am I having this problem? I mean, sometimes in the middle of the night, you're like, what?
Right.
So it's good to say, let's see what our options are. And sometimes this is a necessary catalyst. And let's be out on the other side and celebrate what you learned from it. Life is not fair. Things don't go always the way we think they're going to go, but we can still achieve the result we want. It might just be some more left turns than we thought we were going to have to make.
Yeah. This is a great underlying tone to the word accountability, personal accountability for how we're going
Yes,
to handle a situation. And I've
yes,
got a question that's kind of spun around that. Now, accountability, of course, is very important. We know the need for it, but
hmm
it has almost this negative connotation with it.
yes.
Why do people feel like that word accountability is just innately negative?
I know some people, we did a roundtable discussion with some of our team of coaches about New Year's resolution and goals because it's that time of year.
Hmm.
But for some people, being given a deadline on a calendar is like a test. They're afraid they're going to fail. They have some background of being hyper judged or criticized for falling short. And so to say, I'm going to be held accountable is the same as saying, I'm going to judge you and find you wanting. Like, you're probably gonna fail at this because now
Hmm.
in your mind, you're going down the list of things you didn't do well in the past. Let's do some more of that. No, I don't want any more review to see if I've met, you know, the standards for somebody else. So I think if it's how can you be supported to achieve the goals you set? And if you are halfway to the goal and you realize this isn't what I wanted at all, well, then we do a reset.
Right.
Nobody's failed. You learned in the journey. I don't care for Michigan because it's full of mosquitoes in the summer and it's full of snow in the winter.
Hmm.
I don't know what I was thinking moving to Michigan. Okay, we need to rethink that. So it's not a failure, it's a learning. And now we're going to process that learning into a new direction. But I think it's a past of people being scolded or judged or, treated harshly if they missed a deadline, which is why they kind of avoid accountability.
Yeah. How great that is the way you and created that analogy between accountability and judgment, because that is exactly the word I was looking for when I was
Mhm,
thinking about this, and I was thinking about our conversation was this
mhm,
accountability. I was like, there's a word that goes with that, and I couldn't get it, and you've brought it right to me. So thank you so much for that. You talked earlier a little bit about this emotional freedom technique, the EFT, and as
mhm.
you called it, tapping, uh,
Tapping. Mhm,
and you've got this experience in yoga practices, et cetera,
mhm,
and you've put these alongside these business tenets.
mhm.
Do clients feel now? When I was looking at this, I had this question pop up, and if I'm thinking it, I'm sure thousands of others are thinking it. Do you think clients feel more self worth after a result of the EFT practice and the personal focus that they get,
Mhm.
or is it the sense of motivation that they've been able to align with a business goal?
I think, these kinds of techniques are not for everybody.
Hmm.
EFT works for about 80% of the people who are ready to try it. There are other techniques. I think, engineering minded people don't like feeling based techniques
Yeah.
because they just don't want to be in their feeling space very much. And so Byron Katie's work called The Work, doing a worksheet works great for engineers because it's completely logic based.
Hmm.
And so different tools work for different people. But what happens is you see the release of the burden and they have a sense of peace. I really get what I was doing there now. But if we hadn't gone through this new lens of whether it's EFT and tapping or a worksheet from the work.com, I realized I was unconsciously presupposing this is how they thought about it when I, in fact, do not know how they thought about it. I
Hmm.
assume I know, and it's the assumption that got me into trouble. But the penny has to drop in them because just saying it doesn't quite make it stick. But when they actually see it, oh, I was assuming this is what they were thinking. I said, well, if you ask them, you'll probably find out that's not what they were thinking. This has all been you.
Hmm.
And so here's a way to untangle that using the work.com worksheet or using EFT where you let go of that emotional charge. Massage therapists will tell you sometimes if they're working on somebody's back or they're getting, pain out of the shoulders, it'll trigger remembering a car crash or
Hmm.
a ski injury. It's still being held in the muscle. And so there's a book called The Body Keeps Score
Hmm.
where you actually kind of hold those lessons sometimes and the emotion is still stuck. So getting that emotion released out of your body, out of your mind, you have that lightness of feeling that is gone forever. And for the people that it works for, it's very effective.
Well, that sounds really powerful. You know, I just, as we talked a little bit about this before we started, was this difference between the practical application of leadership
Mhm,
and all of these other powerful things we have that can make us better leaders if
mhm,
we just let ourselves have a little bit of emotion when it comes to whether
mhm,
it's empathy or if it's assertiveness or if it's
mhm,
kind judgment or
mhm,
discipline in the way we talk to people and how we
mhm.
understand that our words have meaning. And so it's really powerful. This whole conversation we're having is really awesome.
People are
Um,
better than they give themselves credit for,
yeah.
usually. And if you can show them, well, sometimes when someone says this didn't work and this didn't work and this didn't work, I just stop and I say, okay, I've heard that didn't work. I'm going to write down 5 things that did work that you're currently not paying attention to.
Hmm.
This and this and this and this, and they always feel better. They said, "Could you do this for me every Monday morning?"
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
no, you learn to do it for yourself. But while we're working together, we can open with your highlight reel if it makes you feel better because you're getting a lot done.
Yeah.
But we tend
Yeah.
to focus on the flaw. The human mind focuses on the flaw, the little part of the carpet that's torn, the little smudge on the windshield. We go straight to the flaw, and all the rest of the windshield is clean and shiny. We don't
Yeah.
notice that part. So, mhm,
When I was back in the day when I was the PM, we talked about that. I had a couple of individuals that something you said earlier about this, and this give me this parenthetical thought.
Mhm.
They got nervous around performance review time.
Yes.
They went through the whole year. They didn't really fill out their quarterly stuff. They didn't journal anything that would help them complete the final performance review at the end of the year. And they had all of these company-based alignment goals they're supposed to be, and how do we achieve things. And
Mhm.
they had very discrete things like do your time card and
Mhm.
be nice to people and help us forecast business in the future and whatever, business
Mhm.
development. And then they had the other stuff like, how am I going to be a better person? How am I going to do X, Y, and Z? And when they would get to the performance review, they would be very nervous because they'd come in and they say, Mr. Adams, I didn't complete but maybe 3 out of the 5 goals. And I
Mhm.
know that when I don't do that, they have this very discretionary idea that because they didn't do all 5, they're going to
Mhm.
get a needs improvement right off the bat.
Mhm.
And maybe some leaders do that. I was not this way. And I think what it was when you were talking about, instead of talking about all the negative things you did
Yes.
or the things you didn't do, let's talk
Mhm.
about the positive things you did.
Mhm.
Let's
Mhm.
talk about goals that you don't have listed here that you completed.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, they would go through the performance review with me, and I would say, okay, look, I'm going to rate you an exceptional in this particular case. And their eyes would like just blow up. And they would say, that's not possible. You don't have the evidence to substantiate giving me an exceptional. And my
Mhm.
response to them was, that's my fault. Like, that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. If
Mhm.
I personally believe that you've created value, you've achieved value, you've done something, you delivered, and you created us, you made us a better organization, I'll
Mhm.
do X, Y, and Z for that. And so
Mhm.
the story that you were telling really kind of lined up with that memory of mine. And I think the courageousness that many leaders need to have is to fight for their people, especially not to just look on a piece of paper and say, Eric didn't win 5 projects this year. He did 5 proposals, and
Mhm.
uh, he didn't increase the value of any of the contracts that he worked on. Um, whatever the cases are. But I think
Mhm.
these discrete ideals of what the ingredients are for a great employee need to be a bit more um, personal based, I think is the way to
I
put it.
think one tip. I mean, I've run my own businesses and done employee reviews and have been hired and had an employee review done. So I've signed more in the front of checks than the back of checks, but I've done both. And it's always a good idea at the end of every month to kind of peruse your month's emails and print out those emails for a file in your drawer that says the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be if you're a manager, you're doing this for your team. And if you're a team member, you're going to talk about the meeting where you brought up the thing that won the contract and you just
Mm-hmm.
print it out and put it in the drawer. And then when it's time for the review, you have a chance to go through it. Most reviews are like the last 6 weeks, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to be a 90-day review or a 6-month review. We have goldfish memories, we just don't go back that far. And you don't want to be in a defensive posture in a review. You want to say, I've got my receipts. We
Mm-hmm.
had an excellent quarter, and you're ready to go. So, of course, there are things that didn't meet expectations because the expectations were out of alignment, or there's a downturn in the industry, not up to you that they lowered interest rates or raised interest rates. I mean, some things are outside of your control. But what's within your control, you can document and just keep track of again, so it's not burdensome when it's time to do the review for the manager or for the team member. You can have the receipts. This is what happened.
Yeah.
And here's always available to improve things. There's always process improvements, if nothing else. And yeah, I think it doesn't have to be a time of fear or judgment. It can be a let's celebrate everything that went right. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's always some room for a little tune up. Where should we focus that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then bring some focus to that. Yeah.
Great advice to move people out of the passive management idea and into the active.
Mm-hmm.
To really do, because I did the same thing you just recommended. I would keep little notes inside of my
Mm-hmm.
software of choice,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, and when I said, "Hey, let's talk about the things you did right," sometimes I would say things and they go, "Oh, I forgot about that."
Yeah.
I can't remember. Like you said, the goldfish memory.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about you for the last 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
Um, and I only have 2 questions really.
Okay.
One of them, the first one is, how did you feel? Uh, and if the question is not aligned with the right,
No
with
worries.
reality, just take off with it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel when you finally made that courageous jump from the security of trading time for compensation to doing more of what you loved and what made you happy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a tremendous feeling of freedom. And I have coached some people into making their avocation their vocation,
Mhm.
or stepping out and opening a consulting firm rather than looking for a W 2 opportunity. And without exception, when they're good at what they do, they say, I'll never go back.
Mhm.
So I was listening to a coach tell me, someone on our team, now that I'm coaching full time, I realize I could work all the time if I wanted to. Like, I'm in charge of everything. I do the invoicing and I do the marketing and I write the posts, and then I do my client sessions, and then I'm writing, Substack posts, or I'm started a book. And I said, but if it brings you joy, then you can certainly manage your time off and get your exercise and eat well and all of that. And he said, I would never go back. I feel like this is what I'm meant to be doing. So I think you're in your right spot when you have feelings like that. And this is absolutely, I'm fulfilling my life's mission. This is
Mhm.
what I was here to do. And I didn't know when I was teaching people meditation so many years ago that it would lead to kind of a holistic approach for coaching, because coaching wasn't a thing. There was
Mhm.
no, and I never wanted to be a therapist, or anything like that. But it's so rewarding. There, you can't put a price tag on the breakthroughs that people have about, I'm never going to worry now about how I speak up in a meeting. I'm never going to worry about how my review is going to go. Or this is what it feels like to know it's time for me to leave a company. And this is the first company I joined. I've been here 10 years, but it is actually time to leave the company. So that's what this is. When you see the penny drop for someone, it's very rewarding, because you almost can't put a price tag on the positive changes that will come on, that will ripple out from their life about knowing that. Every now and then I get a response from someone that said, I know we haven't talked in a while, a year or 2 years, but I'm doing this now and it wouldn't be possible if we hadn't done the work then.
Mhm.
I love the Robert Frost poem, The Road Less Traveled, or The Road Not Taken. And he says, two paths diverge in a wood. And knowing that either one could work, I took the one, that needed more wear, the one
Mhm.
less traveled. But he also says, way leads on to way. So it almost doesn't matter if you turn left or turn right and go down the middle, because the next turn you make will also be the right one. And the next turn you make will also be the way leads on to way. So it takes
Mhm.
some of the pressure off. What if I accept the wrong job? Or what if I don't make the right choice? Then when that penny drops, you make a new choice,
Mhm.
because way leads on to way. It just unfolds as it will. So you don't have to be pressured about, I need to swing for the fences with every pitch. Only home runs count. No,
Right.
load the bases. Base runs count too.
Yeah. Small steps, and if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Um,
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And to see people being fulfilled in challenging times, to still be fulfilled, is tremendously rewarding.
yeah. For someone who might be listening to this particular podcast and they feel a bit overwhelmed, but they have some motivation,
Mhm.
what is one small concrete action they could take today that will help move them closer to this alignment we've talked about?
The first thing they do is they write down, what do they have to work with. So I remind people of the maps that you go when you go into the mall and it says you are here. You know,
Hmm.
look down at your feet, you are here.
Hmm.
What do we have to work with? And then document everything you have. If you're looking for a job, who do you know in the industry? If you need some testimonials or references, who do you need to call? But do an inventory of what you have to work with. You'll be surprised about how much is on that inventory, and then align it for what would be the next best step and the next best step after that, and you're off to the races. So
Hmm.
if you feel overwhelmed and you're not sure of your direction, take an inventory, and that'll bring you back to the real time and what you really have to work with, and then work with that, and it'll move you forward.
Mm. This podcast has been evolving like most do from the very beginning. And we started out in a general idea of leadership, and now we've gotten niched down into consequential leadership.
Hmm.
And it's there's a plethora of things that can go into that, and we typically focus on high impact leaders that, when
Hmm.
things go right or wrong. It really makes a difference for the people around them, and big
Mhm.
differences. I really appreciate your perspective that you've brought, because I think, again, people have this idea of consequential leadership as being
Mhm.
a 4-star general commander who's leading
Yes.
combat mission. That's
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
Then there are those warriors like yourself who are teaching people that you are as powerful as you choose to be, and you
Mhm.
don't need to have Eric, who's a good leader, be your
Mhm.
boss so that you can succeed. You can do it.
Mhm. I do think people sell themselves short, but I think it's just the human condition. It's when someone else tells you, "Wow, you're really good at that." You go, "Oh, you think so?"
Mhm.
So sometimes when people are wondering what should they do with their lives, you say, "Well, what's easy for you but hard for other people?" And that's where your vein is. It's like, what kind of spider did God make you?
Mhm.
The jungle spider, the wood spider, what is easy for you to do but hard for other people? Well, we could start there because you're geared for that. And let's go from there. So I think as people give themselves permission to be leaders in their own lives, and they'll find that they take the reins a little bit more gently. They might be kinder to themselves. And even if it's small steps, they're moving in the direction of their dreams.
Yeah. Wow. Really good conversation, Myrna. I certainly cannot express to you enough the appreciation I have for you taking the time to join me
Of
on this
course.
podcast and getting people to see how important what you do and what you say is to them, uh,
Hmm.
and how important it is to all of us being better leaders. And as we mentioned right at the beginning, one small show at a time, we'll make it happen.
Yes.
So,
Well, like and subscribe to this wonderful podcast, and then you yourself might become a change agent.
yep, absolutely, and that's a great pitch. And I look forward to seeing you more.
Mhm.
I want to keep this conversation going as we
Great.
evolve these things. And so, if you'll have us back with you on
I'd love to.
any,
Yeah, I can't wait to interview you too.
yeah, I'll do my best. As we talked about before, that's not happened with me yet. So who knows what kind of
Mhm.
guest I'll be, but I'll do my
Mhm.
best.
Very good.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much, Eric.
thank you so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your week and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.